Hi, my name is William Bowen, and today we'll be discussing the overuse of force by the Albuquerque Police Department and some proposed solutions for this well-documented problem. This presentation will focus on the use of body cameras and improvements in the APD's training practices. For many years now, there have been accusations that the Albuquerque Police Department employs lethal and less lethal force too liberally, prompting community unrest, including multiple protests against the APD and investigations into the practices of the department by the Police Executive Research Forum, or PERF, and the United States Department of Justice. The findings of these investigations revealed many statistics which supported the idea that APD's use of force is excessive. According to a KRQE.com article, the department shot 33 people, killing 23 between 2010 and 2014. Their rate of fatal shootings per 10,000 citizens is twice as high as the department of the notoriously violent Chicago, 5 times higher than a comparable city in El Paso, and over 5 times higher than that of NYPD. The APD's fatality rate was also of note, in that they killed 70% of their subjects, while departments in all the aforementioned cities had rates lower than 50%. Both the PERF and Department of Justice noted a concern with the use of less lethal force as well. APD used tasers in 48% of incidents in which they tried to subdue an agitated subject physically, and the Department of Justice's letter noted a particular incident in which the officers fired a taser at a man covered in gasoline, setting him on fire and endangering all involved. The PERF noted that on national average, 50% of shootings by police officers take place at a distance of 5 feet or less, and 95% at a distance of 21 feet or less. APD, however, only had 13% of their shootings at 5 feet or less, and an incredible 30% at a distance of 30 feet or more. In incidents in which the department shot at a subject, 60% of the subjects were not holding a firearm, and these two statistics show a willingness to resort to lethal force with individuals who could not have posed an immediate threat, namely those at distances of 30 feet or more without firearms. Finally, the study showed that APD is poor in dealing with individuals with mental illness who do not have the ability to respond to orders. In 30% of use of force incidents in the PERF study, the subject had a history of mental illness, and the APD resorted to force rather than subduing the individual in a more appropriate manner. In a city like Albuquerque and a state like New Mexico, which according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness has nearly 100,000 residents struggling with serious mental illness out of only 2 million, this is unacceptable. This brings me to my first and main solution, body cameras for the police. They are a proven success, as shown in a study of Rialto, California, reported on by the New York Times. In this case, half of the police force began wearing cameras, and within the first year, complaints filed against police officers dropped 88%, and uses of force dropped nearly 60%. These numbers prove the measurable effect of having officers held accountable for their actions with video. This will eliminate secrecy and unknown variables in police shootings. A camera tells the whole story of what went on from an objective standpoint and causes officers to think twice about their actions before resorting to use of force when it is unnecessary. Thanks to this, citizens will feel more protected and safe, which will make their exchanges with police officers more productive and more effective. It will also curb potentially costly disputes by guilty parties and whether or not they were, in fact, guilty of a crime, as the camera will catch them in the act per se. My secondary solution is to improve some training practices of the APD. This is a step recommended in the U.S. Department of Justice's letter. As of now, according to the report by the PERF, 25% of Albuquerque's police officers go through Crisis Intervention Training, or CIT, a training program designed to, quote, prepare officers to effectively deal with persons exhibiting mental illness or disorders, substance abuse, or a combination of issues presenting a crisis, end quote. Albuquerque has a higher mental illness rate than most other major cities, so it is important that all officers are apt in handling these individuals appropriately. The issue APD has with shooting from appropriate distances also indicates that they require further training in confirming that an individual poses an immediate and serious threat to them. The project plan primarily involves the City Council passing laws and regulations to bring these changes into effect. First, there must be a law passed requiring at least 50% of Albuquerque police officers when on duty to wear body cameras, eventually working its way to being a 100% requirement. All officers, as well as the SWAT team and any others in the police department who might exercise any use of force in the field, would eventually be required to wear a camera. According to the most recent available data, a 2008 census performed by the Department of Justice, the APD employs about 1,000 full-time sworn personnel, so while it would be best to act as quickly as possible, it is understood that there must be a transitional period in which not every officer will wear a camera. This universal use of cameras will curb use of force incidents and complaints itself, but will become even more effective when laws and initiatives for improving the training of recruits and the continuous training of current officers are imposed. Through consultation with the police department, an agreement should be reached to improve these practices, specifically bringing CIT training to all officers, as well as making clear to officers what constitutes an imminent and legitimate threat. Finally, there must be an accountability system and penalties implemented for inappropriate uses of force by officers when they are caught on video. Clear guidelines must be set and consequences for abuses of power must be implemented and upheld. The Department of Justice was most concerned with APD's unconstitutional uses of force, and in cases where the evidence seems to indicate that an unconstitutional use of force has occurred, it must be clear to the officers that a criminal investigation will be conducted. The budget for the implementation of a body camera program will be steep but ultimately worth it. According to the News Tribune, in response to the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, Missouri, President Obama announced a spending package that allocated $75 million for 50,000 body cameras for police officers, which according to numbers found by the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial Fund would cover about 1 in every 18 officers in the nation. However, most of the cost lies not in the purchase of the cameras themselves, but in the storage and management of the footage. As reported by a 2015 article by Yahoo News, the city of San Diego has a contract to buy 1,000 cameras for a price of $267,000, but the storage, management, and various other costs are estimated to total about $3.6 million. The price will be hefty to implement a full-scale body camera program, and the price for the storage and management averages around 15 times as much as the devices themselves. The change in training practices, comparatively, has a relatively small cost. Per the National Alliance on Mental Illness, CIT training is low cost because it relies heavily on volunteers. The average cost per officer for trainings by the Georgia and Utah CIT teams are $250 and $175 respectively, slightly lower rates than the cost of the cameras without the storage costs. There are already APD officers being trained in CIT, and this would simply have to be expanded to include all incoming and current officers. Trainings involve 10 to 20 officers at a time and last about a week. The Utah CIT team, for example, trains 550 officers in a year on a budget of $95,000. Keeping in mind that 25% of officers are already trained, in about a year and a half for likely under $150,000, the entire APD could become much better equipped for dealing appropriately with the individuals who made up 30% of the subjects who had force used upon them, which is quite a bargain. While the price for the body camera program would be large, the benefits far outweigh these costs. The Department of Justice's concerns about the APD's unconstitutional uses of force would be quelled as reduction of all uses of force, as well as complaints against the department, would be reduced drastically, as shown by the case study in Rialto. This would also save the department and the city money in the reduction of suits filed against the department. An important point to make is that the public will both feel and be safer in a system which holds officers accountable if they abuse their power, which will improve the productivity and trust that must be present in a successful interaction with law enforcement, and improve the APD's public image and relations. In conclusion, it is obvious that a solution for this issue must be reached, and this proposal would implore you to consider this as an option. Body cameras have been shown to be effective, and training improvements have been suggested by none other than the federal government themselves, who felt that the issue had become pressing enough that they needed to step in. This solution is important for the safety of the community and all who live in it, and for the improvement of the police force, who must be more effective. Steps must be taken to maintain our beautiful city and be a proud representative to the rest of the nation for the state of New Mexico as the largest cultural center in the state. I thank you for your time.